So I want to answer a question left on my last video, and this one comes from a viewer by the name of JAJ145, Jaj at 145. I don't know. Tell me how to pronounce these things. And he asks me, assuming it's a he, yo, I've been getting that's how he starts it. I've been getting into your videos the past couple of weeks, and I really like the insights you share. Thank you. I lead a raid group in Final Fantasy XIV, where raid teams are a much smaller 8-person party. Do you have any tips or insights on the differences between leading larger groups versus smaller teams? I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to start with probably what is and should very well be obvious in this video. I've never played Final Fantasy XIV, never even seen it. That being said, I think that, like I've mentioned before in previous videos, my content here isn't just for World of Warcraft. It's for Final Fantasy XIV, it's for real life, it's for whatever other MMOs are out there. Now, because I haven't played the game, I'm going to have to make some generalized statements about the raiding environment, etc., and we're going to assume, at least for this video, at least for these tips, at least for my thought process, that the raiding environment is very similar or pretty much the same as World of Warcraft. Okay, so, and I guess we would be talking somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, a heroic raid, right? So not super easy, but not super difficult. We'll go middle of the road. So the question that you pose is pretty simple. What are my tips for leading a smaller group in Final Fantasy XIV, where you're looking at a raid group set to 8, or even World of Warcraft, let's say the minimum number of 10 players, as opposed to a mythic raid group of 20, or even you're going to go so far as to get crazy and bring 30 people into the raid. Smaller groups are going to be logistically much easier to run. You know, the logistic side of running that raid is going to be so much easier, almost making me envious of it. There's simply less people to worry about gearing up, so you're going to have a lot easier time recruiting players. There's a lot less slots to fill, and your officers, or maybe even just that one raid leader, that one guild leader, that one group leader, they are going to have a much easier time managing everything, as there's simply less to do, right? Loot's going to be easier, it's going to be easier to manage, and you're going to find it easier to recruit for that one open spot that you have. However, this also means that you're going to need less management overall. There simply isn't enough work for 3 or 4 of your, raid leaders or group leaders or guild leaders or officers. There's not enough work to go around for 3 or 4 leaders. I've said this before. There's a fine balance that you, as a guild leader or a clan leader or whatever it might be, that you have to strike between the amount of raiders that you have in your group that you bring along every single night, and then who that you kind of deputize to be in charge, who you promote, who you say, hey, this is one of my officers. The more people in the group, the more leaders that you're going to need watching your back and covering for you. So simply put, what are my tips for leading that smaller group, whether it be Final Fantasy, whether it be World of Warcraft, whatever the case might be? Smaller the raid, the more responsible you need to make sure each raider is for their own performance. And that's a simple fact. And the more sure you have to be that each person is carrying their weight. You get a group of 30 people, one low DPSer isn't that big of a deal. But in a group of 8 or 10, one singular low DPSer in that group means that every single other player, every one of them, your tanks, your healers, all of your other DPSers especially, this is the same for healers or for tanks, it means that they're going to have to carry that much more dead weight. You and your raid group are going to feel it a lot more. If one of my players dies to a raid mechanic, and we have 20 people in the raid, it sucks, but it's a lot easier to deal with than only having 10 players and one of them die. So you and your raid group will feel it. It also means that any mistake that you're gonna make, that the raid group makes, is gonna be amplified so much more. Every death is gonna matter so much more. Each person, simply put, you need to make sure that they just play better. There's so little room for error the smaller the raid group size is, that you as a leader need to push them to play better. It also means you're gonna have less leeway over people taking breaks, people swapping specs, roles. I don't know how Final Fantasy handles, roles and specs, but if we go with the holy trinity of healers, DPS, and tanks, if somebody says, hey, I don't really feel like healing, I'm going to swap out, we have to fill that role, and there may not be a spot for you. We have to work it out. We can't just simply, there are nights where we're on farm on bosses, and some of my healers will go DPS, and that's okay because we don't need them that much. There's a lot less leeway that you have to do that the smaller the group. When people are out, when people want to take breaks, it's going to hurt a lot more. You as a leader need to be prepared with a backup plan just in case something or someone falls through and a player can't get online, a player's computer broke, or unfortunately, they've left the group. They no longer want to play with you guys. You have to have a backup plan. And it may be as simple as, let's swap to an alt. Let's be very upfront and honest about things and go, look, this guy left, or this guy's computer blew up, his internet went out. We need to shuffle around. Make sure that each of your players is playing their very best that they can be. Push each player and make sure that the group understands that if a player leaves, there's going to be shuffling. If a player's not pulling their weight, they're going to be talked to. If a player's not pulling their weight, that everybody else has to deal with it. Push people, because you're going to have to, as a leader, the smaller the group, push people a lot harder. Now, hopefully this answers your question. And it's as simple as push people harder because there's less leeway for mistakes. There's less leeway for it. There's a smaller margin. Hopefully this answers your question. If it does, or if it does not, please let me know. I do appreciate the support. If you did or did not like this video, let me know down below. You guys know how YouTube works. If you guys have any questions that I can answer, you want my 2 cents on it, please feel free to send them my way. You can do it in the video. You can do it via email. It's on the About section for this channel. And until next time, guys, I'll see you.